Welcome to Spendflo Night Live. This is SNL, our flagship media channel for modern finance and procurement leaders. It's where we have real conversations with people making capital count across 3 shows. Spend to Survive, a podcast on all things private equity, from burn to benchmarks and building enterprise value. Pursuit of Profitability, unfiltered stories from finance and procurement leaders. The AI Stack, rapid-fire chats with AI founders building for finance and procurement. In this episode, we have Keith McFarlane, Chief Technology Officer at Globality. Keith has led engineering at some of the world's biggest enterprise platforms, Oracle, LiveOps, and today he's building Globality's AI-powered sourcing platform and autonomous sourcing, which they actually created as a category. So, Keith, before we dive into AI, sourcing, and building trust with the enterprise CFO, I want to zoom out a little bit. You've built platforms, teams at massive scale. Any early experiences that shaped how you started thinking about building technology for the enterprise?
That's a really good question. And first of all, Sid, I want to thank you for having me on. This is a great opportunity. I'm really looking forward to digging into this stuff with you.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's, all of these questions about, formative years, right, of an engineering leader. Yeah, I guess what I would say is that, I learned fairly early on that, you have to think about people over process in every case. Because I've seen engineering organizations in particular, from my vantage
Mm,
point, engineering
mm, mm.
organizations essentially run on deep process, right? They're a
Yeah.
big machine, they're turning a gigantic
Tickets.
crank,
Yeah.
and they layer process on process on process. Something goes wrong, well, clearly we need more process. We need to add another 6 weeks to this, that, and the other thing. And I guess this is what good comes from working at both major enterprises and small companies and startups, as you see that there are extremes to all this, right? So one of my biggest learnings was even with a large organization, you can absolutely destroy productivity with process if you go too far. Now that's
Mm,
not to say in a small company startup, you don't want the cowboy mentality. You don't want, free for all. You have to have some constraints, but you can't let them go too far. So, I mean, what I will typically do with an engineering organization, is really have that sort of that sort of institutional, I'm going to say common sense,
mm.
where you just don't want to go too far in case of let's say you had
Yeah.
a major problem, major platform
Yeah.
outage. How do you react?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
start by thinking, right? Start by analysis. Start by getting to what was the real problem. And if you do uncover a problem that can be solved through a tweak to process, don't plaster that tweak across 50 disciplines, right?
Yeah.
Don't go overboard. Let's fix the problem at hand, ensure that the class of problems is managed, and
What?
then move on from there.
But like, what really made you shift to people over process? Was there something, in your early experiences, or in the way that you were maybe brought up, or in what you've lived from a life standpoint as well, your life experiences that kind of shaped that people over process
Well,
mentality?
I think it's, I mean, if we're talking about kind of, the way I came up into the world,
Yeah.
I was always taught that you really look someone in the eye as you're shaking their hand, sort of thing. Make sure that that you see the good in everyone. Make sure that you assume everyone has the best of intentions at heart. That was instilled in me
Mm,
from an early age.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and
mm.
so I guess, and this goes actually to back to our world, Globality. One of our
Yeah.
values is trust. Yeah, you don't trust without verifying, but
No.
if you generally hire the right people, trust
Very
them to
much.
do their jobs because that's why you hired them, you're going to
Yeah.
get good results. And in
Makes
the end,
sense.
they'll probably identify where the constraints really ought to be, right? I mean, I'm not going to come down from on high and say we need this process, this process, this process. We need to institute these, and they got to be part of our SDLC, et cetera.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
of that we have to do as a result of being ISO compliant and SOC 2 compliant,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
do what makes sense.
Yeah.
And people are the core of that. They're the ones who know how to do that.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And so now I'm going to get into like just from a procurement standpoint as well, right? Like and AI adoption that you're seeing. We know we were just talking about the MIT report that just came out,
Yeah.
and that's oh yeah, 90 something odd percent of AI projects are essentially failing. But you guys have been going live and being successful with customers for years now. And it's something that I know as someone who's in the procurement space. Everybody knows Globality for that piece as well. So early on, like I want like a almost a before after picture of like what Globality was before like Gen AI or the ChatGPT moment, and an after picture of the ChatGPT moment. What really changed for you guys as well, and how do you make sure that like ROI is actually being delivered to the CFO in this case as well?
That's I love telling the story. So you
Yeah,
set me up beautifully. I first off, let's start with the MIT study, and I will get there. I
yeah,
promise I will get
yeah.
there. Because everyone's talking about it. Everyone is declaring we're in the middle of a bubble, an AI bubble. Yeah, I don't know if we're in an AI bubble. I mean, I think that what happened with most of these projects that MIT pointed out, in that study, if you read the report, it begins with, okay, let's take a project internal. We don't really have the expertise to do it. We're going to try anyway. Let's do a proof of concept, not knowing the value that's going to come out the other side. This is
Mm,
AI. It's magic. It's gonna, magically
do
work, right?
everything.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's smarter than us, right? No, that's not right. The thing is, you can't go into a project without understanding why you're doing it, without understanding
Mm,
where the value is going to come from. So I'll rewind for a second to Leo Delgo's garage, 10
yeah.
years ago. Actual literal garage. I've said this multiple times, but he started this company with machines in his garage, surrounded by a couple of really sharp people, and we grew
Yeah.
that into a lot of sharp people. But um, in the very beginning, the premise was, look, we're not going to be able to make a procurement optimization company, a procurement automation company scale without AI. There's just no way to do it. Maybe the
Mm,
AI is not there yet, back in whatever 2016.
yeah.
Maybe the AI is not ready for the things we wanted to do, but here's how we can start. Let's start with building up a data science team, building up a
Mm,
specialty around some of the NLP involved in procurement, as you know very well,
yeah.
given where Spendflo spends its time.
Yeah.
Much of this is about long form text. Much of
Yes.
this is about interpreting people's thoughts about what they want to buy, how they
Yes.
want to approach a project. So that was where the focus was, is let's build
Mm,
up some models. Let's start with very basic statistical models, for example. Just
yeah.
use,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the Python programming world, we
Yeah.
have something called scikit.
Yeah.
Scikit is just basic statistics, well, advanced statistics, but statistics nonetheless,
Yeah.
telling us how to project out a set of conclusions from data that we've got on hand.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
let's use that to make some very basic predictions. Let's start to build up in the next few years from that, like 2018, 2019, some really early versions of the neural networks works that we still apply today. Um,
mm,
so through that period of time, say 2016 to 2022 or so, we were building models. We had built up this data science specialty. We had, PhDs and master students doing the research on our particular kind of procurement data and how to apply it. So what happens? 2023, right? ChatGPT takes over the world, right?
yeah.
And the position we found ourselves in is, look, we've been doing AI for the last 5 years at a very intensive level. We understand the space, we understand the problems, and moreover, we understand when a model is doing what it should be doing, when it's not doing what it should be doing, and how to correct it. And that applies not just to, these large training sets we use on neural network models. This also applies to prompts, which is
Mm,
the world we live in now with many of these large language models, prompt tuning, prompt engineering.
yeah. Yeah.
So at that inflection point, much of the world, and you go back and look at some of the things that were happening around 23, 24, right? Much early 24, much of the
Yeah.
world, business world was just infusing random features with LLM
Mm,
goodness, right?
yeah.
Using
Yeah. Well,
APIs, right? So
yeah.
engineers are just going wild calling these APIs and kind of feeding stuff out into the
Yes.
world. And you end up with the concept of AI slop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slop's impact is magnified in a business context, right? It is
Ah,
magnified in the negative, right? So now we've got, horrible output text. We've got, bad decisions being made, all on account of this misapplication of large language models that have all this power. But in our case, we started off with use cases we knew that we needed to solve, but we could understand early, and that the
Mm,
LLM could understand early. And as the models got better, we started to do things like, well, now the LLM knows how to, our agent, Glow, knows how to select the right questions for a project. It knows very
mm,
well how to classify a project into kinds of services and products that are required.
mm,
It's very good at this point of doing pricing analytics uh,
mm,
in the scope of a given project. You've got three, four, 10 proposals. Let's take a look across those and let's get some insights about those proposals.
yes,
Um,
yes.
and further, now we see the ability growing for these chat conversations to turn more into negotiation conversations. Now,
Yeah.
let me say something about that. Yes, we find that agents can be helpful in that process, but
Mm,
we also find, and I think this is a part of your value question,
yeah.
we also find that they can only be helpful in the hands of expert humans, of people that
Ah,
are helping
okay.
with, determinations around really how with the direction a project ought to go. Really,
Mm,
how much should this cost? How do we drive a given, a bit of value out of a negotiation process when I've got these 10 variables? I mean, it's not a pure AI job. That is a human job that can be augmented by
mm.
AI. So I guess, to sum up, Sid, I would tell you that, we went from let's find value from AI to let's find value from AI. That was the continuity across that 10 years.
And no, so like from like an ROI pitch, right? Like especially when you're saying, hey, we'll become your autonomous sourcing, and Glow will do this for you. Glow can actually negotiate. So when you're actually selling into like a procurement or a finance leadership, like how is ROI kind of measured in their eyes, and what have you seen successful in that?
Usually, the CFO's eyes light up when we start talking about 20% savings. And I know
Yeah,
you've seen that one too. I know
yeah,
you've seen
yeah,
it's just different dimensions, right?
yeah, exactly.
But then we can start to talk more about, you're not just finding savings across all these very large projects.
Mm,
You're also reducing cycle time on a sourcing event from,
yeah,
10 days to 1 day, from
yeah,
3 months to a week, right? And you get into conversations about efficiency, about savings, and across all those dimensions. I mean, the
Have
space we
you?
play in. Go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
Have you like when you say savings, right? Like what this is something that I'm seeing as well, which is pre-AI, the savings used to have to come from like the suppliers, right? Like that's like the procurement supplier juice that savings are. It's not necessarily the cost to procure or like say, hey, services or like there's a bunch of like there's 100 humans doing this, there's 10 humans doing this, there's like incremental number of like headcount actually doing this job. Have you seen the shift from the CFO's lens of saying, "Hey, can I actually use some of like headcount budget or service budget into actually investing in globality, for example?"
Yeah, I think that I think that is you're asking me, whether or not they're looking at shifting headcount, which
Yeah.
is a touchy question, Sid. It's a touchy question.
But
Um,
I have to
it's
ask.
going to depend on the organization because, I would go so far as to say, look, there are organizations out there, very large organizations with really, really big
Yeah.
procurers. And every organization probably has some room to trim a little bit.
Yeah.
That said, most of the time, procurement organizations are so overwhelmed
Yes.
and are not looking at most of the spend that if you put
Mm.
an AI tool in their hands and they magnify their effect by 2 times to 5 times, for example, suddenly you're finding more opportunities to save across all these different events, right? Instead of ignoring, X% of them. So I
Yeah.
think
And
that would, to me, that's the right way to look at it. Now, can you save on, depending on the structure of your organization, depending on the roles, can you reorganize
yeah.
a bit? I mean,
Yeah.
it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, like the cool part, especially when you're dealing with procurement, and I think this is the advantage that companies like us would have, is that typically not all spend is being managed because it's procurement is typically understaffed. You said it's overwhelmed. So if you can go create more coverage across that spend that is being managed, That's massive value addition to a lot of these organizations as well, right? Like, so that itself like justifies the ROI.
Okay. And not to sit here and plug your stuff, Sid, but I
Yeah.
mean, we've got our Spendflo integration to oh gosh, NetSuite.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
of course, we see the charts, right? What's covered,
yeah,
what's not covered, and how can we increase it? I mean, I mean, and that's for us too.
yeah,
If we've got the ability to land good spend
yeah.
analytics in front of the CFO, that's another place where their eyes light up.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm curious as well. Like, do you see that, especially in the AI world today, one piece that I'm seeing is that I think it gives the ability for procurement teams to take back control of maybe historically outsourced processes, or historically outsourced kind of processes which they don't necessarily have control and visibility into, but it's just being done the way it is, right? Like, so is that something that you see, especially from a sourcing and where you play as well, Keith?
I can imagine that being the case. Certainly, I can imagine, I mean, if for example, if you were to farm out if I put together a proposal, and
Yeah.
I farmed out the sort of glossifying of that proposal. I mean,
Yes.
I can see that getting done. I've seen that done through AI, right?
Yeah.
If I have if I want to put together a presentation on a project,
Yeah.
and just use AI as a check mark to create that presentation.
Yeah.
I mean, all these things are just a call away in
Yeah.
co-pilots, right? So,
Yeah.
and now that co-pilots are getting more access to systems natively, with the model
Yes.
context protocol, for
Yeah.
example, and agent
Yeah.
interfaces. I mean, these are
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
getting more powerful, right? So, yes, putting all of these tools in the hands, for example, of the procurement professional,
Mm,
allows them to consider doing things themselves
mm,
very quickly, where they might have,
mm.
like, for example, sent a sort of an analysis of multiple
Yeah.
proposals out into the world to
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
what the should cost ought to be.
Yeah, that's going to take a long time to come back. Now it's going to be immediate with
Hmm.
especially with low. And I'm curious as well, right? Like one thing that I'm seeing, especially with enterprises as well, is that CFOs are like still kind of like there's what are the guardrails around AI? Is it safe? Can I actually use it with my enterprise data? Like how do you? They all I think now have budget and the kind of the willingness to try. But I think they still have to get up past the safety question or like AI safety or like a kind of trust with their data, especially with like, and I'm guessing procurement teams are very similar because they're also like kind of risk adjusted all the time. So what is a good way to like kind of explain what and how AI can actually, it can be safe, it can actually help you, and how do you get past that hurdle? And to
Yeah.
make sure that trust is built with the CFO.
That is a really, really good question and a very important one to address with CFOs because I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
they're part of their job is assessing risk, making
yeah,
sure that they're not going afoul of it. What we will tend to do is start with education, right? What are the
mm,
actual risks? So I will say right up front, look, one of the things that our customers might be worried about, for example, is something we call data leakage, right?
mm,
So let's say someone came along, used their data to train a model, and someone else used the model and started to see secrets from that customer from their projects. That would be unconscionable, right? That's a huge risk. And this is
yes.
why what we tell our customers in answer to this is we don't use your data to train models. We don't
Mm-hmm.
use your data to train models. We don't have to. There's no good reason to use your data, customer, to train these models. Instead,
Mm,
yes, we will use versions of that data to make a call to an LLM and get our analysis back based on the prompts.
yeah, yeah.
But we've also got solid agreements, and we can reference these with customers, agreements with any LLM provider, be it
Mm,
Microsoft, OpenAI, whoever, that number one, that data will never be used to train their models. And
mm,
number two, they will never store on disk any of the data that we use in API calls. So
mm,
it's a matter of, okay, CFO, these are the risks. We're going to
mm.
educate you on the risks and then knocking those risks down with regard to the things that you're going to provide. That's what I found to be effective.
Do you get pulled into sales meetings to do that? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot. A lot. And you know,
I can
it's always
imagine.
it's always, it's never the same experience, right? It's never the same, and it's always so it's always so enlightening to see what everyone's concerns are. Quite often these same themes arise, but every once
Yeah.
in a while, there's a curveball in there, and I have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah. Because I see that like my co-founder CTO keeps getting pulled into these meetings now. I'm like, it's like I've never been in so many sales calls ever in my life before.
Absolutely. We have, we have, of course, myself. We have our InfoSec specialist that helps with
Yeah.
some of these things. We are increasingly seeing, as part of the risk assessment,
Yeah.
more and more very detailed assessments of AI in particular.
Mm.
Responding on things like how do you prevent bias? How do you
Yes.
prevent training data from seeping into the
Wow.
models, et cetera, et cetera. So it's becoming more of a. It's the reason that we align ourselves with, for example, ISO 42001, right?
Yeah.
Is a solid
Key
standard.
AI.
I'm going to recommend that everyone in a position like mine familiarizes themselves with.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, that's something that we're looking at as well. Like it's quickly something that we are also getting familiar with as we have to. One of the pieces is when CFOs like you mentioned, like we were talking about this before the recording, there's a lot more AI noise now as well, right? There's a lot more like, oh, I can do this. I can spin up like an AI agent for this. I can spin up another AI agent for this. I think there's a lot of like folks building companies now, which is also always good. But at the same time, there's a lot more noise for the customer when they're buying. So when they're buying, they have to like sift through like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 vendors to just get through the one that actually makes sense. So, what's a smart question that like a CFO can ask to say, hey, have you benchmarked them and what is actually why is this better than the other, right? What is a way for them to say, oh man, we know what we're talking about, or like say in Globality's case, like what is a metric or what is something that you show that makes you guys really, really stand out in that?
Yeah, that's a really really good question as well. You got great questions today, Sid. Uh, I guess the way that we approach that is we are open about exactly those places in the product where we apply AI and
Mm,
why it's better than a typical process. Good example is we use large language models to search through documents that are uploaded and use those to answer questions for scoping purposes. So what
makes
would you
sense.
have to do if you didn't have that capability? Well, you'd have to come in, type in all the responses, cut and paste. You'd, probably miss one or two of the sentiments in the documents. And one thing I can tell you is that with, the way we've built our prompts up, they don't miss those things. If there's
Nice.
an answerable question within the document
So
you upload, we're going to find it.
a good
So
way, a good way to say, hey, like the accuracy of every search query that you put into the globality system is actually very, very high.
it
And
is.
that's like a good way to say that's a metric that makes it really, really special.
Right. And we can come along and show metrics like, here's a
Yeah.
confusion matrix,
Yeah.
versus this model, et cetera. We can do that if it's useful or valuable. What I find is that there's almost never an occasion where that kind of information is being requested. What people really want to know is how is this actually going to be
Help
of
me.
value, right?
Yeah.
How is this going to help me? What use cases does
Mm.
this actually address? So most of the
Yeah.
time it's let me show you, right? They see it in very detailed demos and they understand what they're going to get.
Makes sense. And what are some like skills or mindset shifts that you think procurement leaders and finance leaders need to make in this age, right? Like I'm guessing you were lucky enough to work with probably a lot of early adopters that probably had that, right? And now you're probably seeing a lot of companies that said no to you maybe 5 years ago that are probably coming back to you now, right? And so
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
so like it's happening, right? Like, and so what is it that what is that mindset shift, or what is that mindset that you think we should like finance and procurement leaders should have?
Yeah, I think it's subtle, right? So, first off, yes, everyone should be asking, how can AI help me in this case, that case, the other
Yeah.
case? But no one should be saying, let's apply AI to everything always right now
All at
as quickly
once.
as we can. Yeah, everything all at once. Right. It's a great movie. Um,
Yeah.
I guess the lesson from 2023
Mm,
especially is do your share of thinking about your problems first. Then go
mm,
off and see if AI exists to solve the problem, right? So, I mean, we've had many of our customers, we've got great customers like BT and Santander and
yeah.
others that, they came out looking for solutions to problems they had already identified. We can't
Nice.
keep up with the need in procurement. We don't think we're saving enough. Now, what are the tools out there, AI enabled or not, that can help us out with that job? And it just so happened, when they come upon us, when they hear about us from people they know in the industry, there are these proven facts about our platform, the saving 20%,
Mm,
hyper efficiency, all of these things that come with the package. But I think they got to know what they're trying to solve first. That's first and foremost. And that seems like such basic advice, but I'll tell you what, I don't see it followed as often as it should be.
So you're saying like always make sure that you isolate the problems that you're facing, prioritize which ones they are, and then you stay hey, like now probably a lot of them could be solved with AI as well, but just be open to
Well,
the
I'm
fact
sure.
that
I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, be open to the
And
fact
also
that you
remember
can
that not every solution that comes your way is going to be an actual solution to the problem, right? So,
yeah.
it's going to take some evaluation.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine that as well. Like, and so isolating the problem actually now in this world is one of the most important skill sets that they could have, and I'm guessing all of us could have right now because I'm guessing with AI you can like stick AI on top of anything and it
Yeah, yeah.
probably solve
But
some
go
of
back
it.
to the MIT study.
No.
Why the 95% failure rate? Well, because people didn't understand why they were trying to apply AI in the first place.
Yeah, it's funny, like even at like organizations, smaller organizations like ours, the skill set that like I think we have to hone over a period of time is that we could wipe code anything, we could actually build anything. It's all possible today. But like there's a book that I can kind of keep rephrasing to my team. It's The Goal. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you are probably right. Like it's like there's a kid in the book. It's called Herbie, and like figuring out the Herbie to your problem is like, what's that one kernel, like you said, of thing? Like what is that one block in your process where you think you could apply AI and it could really really work?
yeah.
That's the piece that you really need to go and identify and make it like your
Absolutely true.
biggest priority
Totally agree.
as well. But so you've also referenced this, right? You've argued that it's almost impossible to think in 3 to 5 year timelines, right? Like because
I'm getting
things
that
take
quoted back at me a lot.
yeah. But because it's probably true. Like I actually agree with you on it. Like we used to think like, oh yeah, this should happen next quarter or the quarter. I can't even like predict what's gonna happen next week now anymore. So I think like traditional like a separate topic. I think all annual planning is actually broken because of that as
Yeah.
well. And I think all like goal setting and all kind of ways to operate a company have changed
Oh yeah.
fundamentally because of that. But but especially when it's happening so quickly, if next year's procurement workflow is going to look completely different, what do you think like CFOs or procurement leaders are going to get surprised by? Like at least in the next year, because I'm not asking for a 3 year prediction. I'm asking for like the next year now.
Yeah. What are they going to be surprised by? Which is the rub, right? Because, how do you know what's going to surprise you?
Yeah,
Um, but, I mean, part of if you look at part of the responsibility of the CFO, it's FP&A, right? It's that forecasting.
yeah.
Um, well, how do you forecast what's going to happen with AI? Let me tell you what I do. And this goes to
Mm.
actually, I saw one of the things that we were going to talk about later is, what prompts do you use?
Yeah. Yes,
Let
that's
me
going to be the
answer that one
question.
in advance. One of my
Okay.
favorite prompts
Okay.
is the prompt I use to build my weekly AI industry state report.
Ah.
I just feed it right in, say, hey, click deep research. And it's amazingly good. It's amazingly good. I don't have to go
Whoa.
out and, do a bunch of searches, look at my favorite websites. Forget it. I just have it go off and do the research for me. What happened in the last week around AI? What happened in
Wow.
the last week around AI with regard to financial applications? What are the things that are surfacing as trends? And the deep research models are getting very good, at least at finding interesting things out in the world that you can kind of
Yeah.
double. Um,
If you don't mind, like I mean, like one thing that I think one thing that's been very helpful, like we did an AI CFO roadshow, like on a roadshow like the last month or so. And the thing that was really helpful was for folks to just actually like pull up their screen and show that GPT prompt that they actually used and see it like the thing. I'm gonna put
it's
you on the spot here. You can say no. You can say like Sid, I'll send the prompt to you later. But if you don't mind, like I like because there's gonna be a video and we're gonna post it. So I thought just showing what Keith does,
Can
it could
I
be
can
really
I give
interesting.
that to you? Can I give it to you offline? Because
Yeah,
I'd love
yeah,
to.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
I'd love
yeah,
to give it to you. Let me just take a
yeah,
look and
yeah.
make sure because I mean my language is often quite informal. Uh, so I
That's
want to
fine.
make sure it's not an
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
embarrassing
No.
prompt. It gets the job done. It gets the job done.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for. But like, if you don't mind sharing it, like I think
Of course.
the thing that people are looking for is you've probably figured out something, and people shouldn't break their heads to figure it out again. They should just be learning from it as well. Like, and
That's fair
yeah.
enough.
But thank you for sharing that. That is actually really smart. The number of substacks I have to get through to actually just get that information is so tedious.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
it
I
is.
mean, a lot of this stuff will show up in deep research, which is, I mean, I think that all the sources that they're quoting are, they're not breaching paywalls or anything like that. I think it's
Yeah,
all just out there, waiting to be
yeah,
harvested, and they do it.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty cool. Then it actually comes down to like, there's a couple of rapid fire questions, and short and quick answers. But like you've already answered one of it already. But I'm probably gonna add on one. Just quick answers from you. I'm gonna shoot them out pretty quickly. So,
Sure.
you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Bring it.
So what's a Substack or a podcast or a book that you've been like just hooked onto right now?
Oh gosh. I will give you my long term because,
Yeah.
in the moment, I'll give you my long term what I think everyone
Yes.
ought to read. And that
Yes.
is a book called Watership Down by Richard Adams. It is,
Watership Down.
yeah, and it's an unusual recommendation. It's not a business book. It is
Mm-hmm.
a story about the way that a set, and these are rabbits running across the English countryside, the way that they encounter different kinds of groups of rabbits and how they interrelate. And it's about leadership and it's about identifying the individual potential contributions of everyone on your team in a lot of ways. So I would recommend that book
Oh
to
wow.
anyone in a leadership position. Plus, it's great for
Um,
kids.
it's great for kids as well. Okay, then as the father of a newborn, similar to you, like I think that's what we really need right now as well.
Absolutely.
Uh, like it's a whole other separate topic, but I have a book recommendation for you. It's called Father to Daughter by
Father.
or Father to Daughter or Father to Son. Like it's like there's
Mhm.
like a I know I'm going off topic. They're gonna kill me,
That's all right.
but it's
Always looking for
uh
book recommendations. Absolutely.
yeah, it's one of the best things. I think it's Harry H. Harrison, and
Okay.
it's like a pocket book. It's like one page with one sentence each.
Huh.
Father to daughter. That's it. It's one of the best things that I've read this year.
Very nice. I
So,
will take a look.
yeah, yeah, but yeah. Then the second question I had was, what's the most overrated KPI that you kind of come across?
You might hear this one a lot, but NPS.
Yeah.
Uh, I care about NPS. Don't get me wrong. It's great to see, that you're being recommended. At the same time, statistically, the way that that system works is probably one of
Broken.
the most misleading indicators of, for example, actual value, right?
Mm,
So, I think I guess maybe it has value, but it's also misapplied
mm.
in a lot of ways. I don't think you get a good reading of the total value of an application, for example, just by looking at NPS.
That's a good one as well. But because you already answered my rapid fire the third question on the GPT
My bad.
prompt. But so I am going to ask you one more to just like make sure that I get the rapid fire in.
Okay.
What's what's one way that you've actually said, okay, great, people over process. So one of the things is, how do you actually make other people AI native in your team? How do you get them to adopt, or how do you actually show them what to adopt? Is there a hack that you kind of identified on internal team
Yeah.
uh, adopting AI?
What you do is you find ways to foster the environment, right? So, for example,
Mm.
we started off with a small set of, and this was, a while back, a small set of engineers trialing Cursor as a development environment.
Ah,
And we saw the results. We saw what was good, what was bad, and we made the decision as a team, we're going
yeah,
to adopt this. Everyone's getting a license for Cursor, and the rest is history as far as my team's concerned. They're using it all the time
nice,
for everything. I see the
nice.
statistics, so that has accelerated us. But along the way, we had to share our learnings, right? So we just built up a Slack channel called Cursor Insights, and we
Ah,
share what we learn. We get better. We share the videos of capabilities other people are sharing, and I can tell you that we've found ways to really incorporate that tool deeply into what we do. Um,
nice.
Same goes for some of the tools we're trying to apply around QA and other
Yeah,
specialties. But I think it's don't start by trying to force everybody to use tool X.
yeah.
Start by
Small.
identifying the value of the tool, educating everyone on the value, bringing them along and going. Now,
Nice.
if there is, I'm going to say if there is, I think unwarranted resistance to the use of the tools, that is something you got
Yeah,
to deal with because
yeah, yeah.
in the end, there is value there. You know,
Yes.
you find it, you point it out, everyone's got to start using the tool. I mean, that's just a conversation you got to have.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Keith. Keith, this has been one of the most incredible podcasts I've ever recorded. It's just a great under the hood on how AI is being adopted in the enterprise, how value is being measured as well, and how ROI is being calculated as well. So for CFOs listening in, what's the one piece of advice you would give them when rolling out AI platforms or just evaluating AI platforms to just as a closing note?
I would say that you should ask every business function what they're doing with AI, understand it, and understand why it's going to produce value, right?
Mm,
Why it's
mm,
going to save money. Because anyone who's rolling out an AI tool should be able to tell you that. Otherwise, you need to really think about what you're buying.
yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Keith, for joining us. I really, really had a good time. And a happy weekend.
And Sid, thank you very much for having me on. This has been just a brilliant time. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith.